Got a 2008 or 2009 Ford F. It was one of those. It's a Ford F-150. It's a Ford truck. That's what it is. Now, I'm facing the alternator because it needs an alternator. No big deal. What we're gonna do, simply just check the voltage value that it's producing and get to work on replacing the alternator. Typically, I don't know this system here, but typically you'll have bias voltage on one for the L terminal and then like 12 volts on the other ones, hot one on for the alternator. So I might just check those also and just see if we got 12 volts on all three of those. But first, let's check the voltage, and we could probably just go through the old school test of just disconnecting the terminal and see if it shuts down out of curiosity. So let's try that. Not making enough voltage right at 12 volts. This is a brand new battery. So logically it should shut down, pulling the negative terminal off. Oh god. Yeah, it did. I need to fix that terminal. Alright, let's I think I can check the voltage value because I've bit my ass in the past by not doing that. One other thing I need to do is check the terminal directly at the battery and see if that's producing 14 volts, because it could be a broken connection. That's still 12 volts. If we have voltage on all the terminals. That center wire ain't making any voltage, and it's the same color as the other wire, the green and orange. So I'd imagine it needs to be producing 12 volts also. Let me take a test light, put it to it, and see if it changes charging state. This is the safest way to administer voltage. Now again, this is me not looking at any wiring schematics. So this is grounded out, which likely this is going to be the L terminal. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to shut the car off and see if there's 12 volts on this terminal here. Let me try that. There should be 12 volts on that center terminal. And it's not. So, and you know, let me do this. Let me just pull up a wiring diagram. How about that? All right. So I learned something new. So allegedly, these two wires, the green wires are the CAN low and CAN high terminal. That's what identific state. So I'm just going off of what it stated. I'm not saying it's true, but it is strange that one of them had voltage going to it, like 12 volts, and I want to say the one I was checking middle one, this is can 2. That's weird that the can high one has 12 volts and the center one has 0. So, ain't the brightest man in the world. I'm gonna put another alternator on here and we'll see what happens. But basically, I mean, we have 12 volts going to it, the fusible link on the end here, and if these are saying can low and can high, this is obviously gonna be computer controlled. But why would the can have 12 volts? Strange. So let's throw an alternator on here. Let's see what happens. And I want to check the center pin with the voltage value, because sometimes the wiring diagrams lie. They're not correct. So let me take this off again. All right, let's pull this battery post off and jump into it. All right, I got a 15 millimeter here for the tensioner. I got a 10 millimeter for the battery power bolt here in the back of the alternator. You know, when I think about it, I guess if the alternator doesn't sense any type of 12 volt signal coming back out to itself, then it's probably going to deactivate the alternator from working. Maybe it grounded that terminal. Maybe that's the field terminal for the CAN system, and it grounded it out just to go 100%. I don't know. So we got a 13. This is actually a 1/2 inch. All right. Let's see if I can get that zipped off. I shouldn't use this. Oh gosh. Let's see if that actually makes a difference. Yeah. It actually did. So we got 15 millimeter. I'm gonna have to use a 15 deep socket to get those out. I'm gonna do that last one at the top there. This is not a good idea. I'm gonna go ahead and pull that belt off shortly. I'm replacing that whole belt because I didn't like the condition that it was in, so I did quote him a new belt too. And let me get the 15. I should be able to use that with, I was about to say, please follow with it. It was my fault. I shouldn't be putting stuff on the battery anyway. Pull it off the smooth pulley. And I can pull that top bolt off. The alternator, pull it all the way out. Easy. I got back from the parts. Well, my intention, this has been like an hour later, over an hour later. Reasons being, the parts store gave me the wrong alternator. So I had to go back to the parts store, get a correct alternator, but they didn't have it. I need to get this job done today. So I had to go to AutoZone after I got my refund, then get the correct alternator. So I have an alternator from AutoZone, belt from O'Reilly's, and I'm at the assemble everything, and then we'll check that middle terminal just out of curiosity and see what comes up, and go from there. Because again, that center terminal was grounded, if I recall properly, and wasn't producing 12 volts. So I wonder if that was controlling the L terminal. And I'm just out of curiosity with the L terminal. It said it was a can on the wiring diagram, so you know, I don't know. Let me get everything installed, and then we get this belt back on, go from there. One thing I did notice, I don't know if y'all saw it or not, but the alternator on the old alternator housing was cracked, and I thought that was pretty interesting. I'm not sure if that was because of how it was clamped down and just age, but I do have a video of that when I was at the parts store, wound up capturing that, and I wonder if that had any contribution into premature, no, I don't want to say prematurely failing, into failing, but how the expansion and contraction of that metal and how it's bolted down had any influence on that cracking. But it looked like water accumulated based off the design, and it eroded. So here's the new one. Let's put this beauty back in here, start it up, and get this. I gotta change the oil too. Oh gosh, let's not break this one. At least this is easy. I'm gonna lube those bolts with some, lube these up with fluid film and drive those back in there. Should throw some gloves on. I'm going bare today. Now, assuming that this just don't work, and well, assuming it don't work, then I have to actually diagnose it. So, yeah, in a way, I'm taking a shot in the dark throwing this on here. In a way. At least, though, I did check for power going to the alternator, check the alternator. So it was like a 50-50 type assessment. Run that in there. That. Back in here. Snug that now. Harness back in there. Where's the connector? It's somewhere. Somewhere. There we go. back in there. These are the main ones that probably need fluid film, but being that they came off and they're going back on there, or shouldn't have to use it. Uh-oh. Let's get this belt off and get that replaced. So it goes around the crank, over the water pump, and I can figure out the rest. That's the main thing. Around the crank, over the water pump. I didn't like the way this belt looked. It was dry rotted. See that dry rot? Those cracks in there. Unfortunately, I had to get a cheapo belt. Again, they didn't have the gates in stock, so we have to put a Master Pro brand on here. Take the tensioner and go over the smooth pulley. That's great. All right, start it up and see how this charging system works. Now, I did have an alternator from AutoZone fail right out the box before, so I'm not gonna say this is gonna happen with this one. I mean, I've had a premature failure with AutoZone, O'Reilly's alternators. Trust me, trust me. Volts. Let's see what that middle terminal is making. Before it was making 0. So theoretically, is that middle terminal is grounded out, because if I put a test light to it from positive and it illuminates, then it's a ground. So let me see what the value is, just out of curiosity. So again, it's supposed to be a low value anyway. I grounded it, it goes low. So this is making 2 volts, 2.8 volts on average. Like grounded 14. So this is making the, it's producing the output of the alternator, the center one. That's number 2 pin. Just out of curiosity, you know. We know this is working now because we obviously checked the voltage value at the battery and it's producing 14 volts. So this was a bad unit. All right, labor time on this is supposed to be 0.6 hours. Nothing big, very simple. It's 13 millimeter, 15 millimeter, and that's it. Pull the battery off for an 8, and I got it replaced. So I'm gonna let this run out. I gotta change the oil also, and get a customer call, let them know their truck is ready. But if anything happened, I'll definitely update. Hit that link, subscribe to the channel, stay informed how the original's gonna work. See you next one.